On May 5th, 1880, in a prosperous quarter of Brussels, a child was born who would become one of history's most remarkable warriors. Adrian Paul Guillain Carton de Wiart entered a world of privilege and mystery. His birth itself shrouded in intrigue that would later fuel speculation about royal parentage. While officially the son of Belgian lawyer Léon Constant, Guillain Carton de Wiart, persistent rumors suggested his true father was King Leopold II of Belgium, whose numerous affairs were well documented. The earliest years of Adrian's life provided the foundation for his extraordinary resilience. At age 6, his mother, Ernestine Wenzig, disappeared from his life, an abandonment that modern psychologists suggest contributed to his later ability to endure extreme hardship without emotional attachment. His mother's true story adds another layer of intrigue to his origins. Some claimed she was a former Circassian slave, rescued from Ottoman markets, while others maintained she was the daughter of a wealthy German furrier named Ferdinand Wenzig. After his parents' separation, Adrian's father moved the family to Cairo, where he established himself in Egypt's mixed courts and became director of the Cairo Electric Railways. This early exposure to different cultures and languages proved formative. Young Adrian quickly mastered Arabic, adding to his French and developing English skills. More importantly, he learned to adapt to new environments, a skill that would serve him throughout his globe-spanning career. The next pivotal moment came at age 11, when his English stepmother arranged his education at the Roman Catholic Oratory School in Birmingham. This decision launched his transformation from continental aristocrat to British warrior. The school's rigorous physical regime and emphasis on character development perfectly suited Adrian's natural inclinations. He excelled in sports, particularly rugby and boxing, while displaying an early appetite for risk that would later define his military career. By 1899, he was nominally studying law at Balliol College, Oxford, though contemporaries noted he spent more time on sports and socializing than academics. His time at Oxford revealed key aspects of his character: a sophisticated appreciation for wine and fine dining that would surprisingly persist through his military hardships, an ability to move easily in elite social circles, and most importantly, a growing restlessness with civilian life. The outbreak of the Second Boer War in October 1899 provided the catalyst that would transform this restless young aristocrat into a professional warrior. His response to the conflict revealed his essential nature. He cared little for the political causes, but was drawn irresistibly to combat itself. At that moment, he later wrote, "I knew once and for all that war was in my blood. I was determined to fight and didn't mind who or what. I didn't know why the war had started, and I didn't care on which side I was to fight." The transformation of Adrian Carton de Wiart from Oxford student to combat soldier began with an act of carefully planned deception. Creating the identity of Trooper Carton, he aged himself up to 25 on paper and concealed his Belgian nationality to enlist in the British Army's Imperial Yeomanry. This early display of determination foreshadowed his lifelong pattern of letting nothing, not rules, wounds, or conventional wisdom, stand between him and combat. His initial military training revealed natural aptitudes that would serve him throughout his career. Despite his aristocratic background, he adapted easily to the rigors of military life, displaying an innate understanding of horsemanship and weapons handling. His Oxford-educated manner disappeared beneath a carefully cultivated soldier's demeanor, though his natural leadership qualities couldn't be entirely hidden. The reality of combat found him in early 1900, not in a glorious cavalry charge, but in a brutal ambush during a river crossing. 2 Boer marksmen's bullets struck him, one in the stomach, one in the groin. His response to these potentially fatal wounds established a pattern that would become legendary: stoic endurance, followed by relentless determination to return to action. When asked later about the number of enemy forces, he delivered what would become a characteristically understated response. No, but the few were very good shots. The medical treatment he received for these first wounds proved particularly significant in military medical history. Doctors noted his exceptional ability to endure pain and his unusually rapid healing, characteristics that would later be studied extensively by military physicians. His medical records from this period, preserved in British military archives, document the first instance of his remarkable physiological resilience. During his convalescence in England, he faced a different kind of challenge, explaining his actions to his father. Adrian Carton de Wiart's reaction provided insight into their relationship. Rather than anger, the elder Carton de Wiart showed understanding, perhaps recognizing in his son's impulsiveness echoes of his own youthful adventures. This period of recovery also demonstrated Adrian's characteristic impatience with medical authority. He consistently pushed himself beyond doctors' recommendations, developing a rigorous physical rehabilitation regime that he would refine throughout his career. His return to South Africa in 1901 marked the beginning of his formal military career. Now properly commissioned in the 4th Dragoon Guards, he began developing the leadership style that would distinguish him throughout his service. He combined natural aristocratic authority with a willingness to share his men's hardships, earning their respect through action rather than rank. His brief promotion to corporal, lasting exactly 24 hours before being revoked for threatening a sergeant, demonstrated both his natural command abilities and his lifelong intolerance for what he perceived as incompetent leadership. During this period, he developed his extraordinary physical capabilities. Despite his recent wounds, he maintained a punishing exercise regime, building the strength that would later allow him to perform remarkable feats of endurance. He began documenting his training methods in a diary, records that would later influence military physical training, but were tragically lost when the Soviets seized his Polish estate in 1939. With the Boer War's end in 1902, Carton de Wiart faced the challenge that would plague many career soldiers, finding purpose in peacetime. His post into India provided an unexpected answer, transforming him from a battle-tested officer into a complete warrior. The subcontinent, with its fusion of British military tradition and ancient martial cultures, proved the perfect forge for his developing character. In India, he discovered pig sticking, a dangerous sport that involved hunting wild boar on horseback with a spear. This pursuit perfectly matched his temperament. It required courage, quick decision-making, and comfort with extreme risk. He described it as the finest and most exciting sport in the world, though it nearly killed him when his horse rolled on him, breaking several ribs and damaging his ankle. True to form, he was back in the saddle as soon as he could stand. His time in India revealed both his growing physical prowess and his characteristic impatience with authority. A notorious incident occurred when, recovering from his pig-sticking injuries in a military hospital, he began throwing rocks at a servant who irritated him. When he ran out of projectiles within reach, he drew his pistol and shot the man in the buttocks. His official explanation, that the wound was no doubt inconvenient for him, but certainly not dangerous, demonstrated the casual attitude toward violence that marked his entire career. During this period, he developed extraordinary physical abilities that would later serve him well in combat. He could reportedly rip a deck of cards in half with his bare hands, a feat requiring immense grip strength. His daily routine included running, riding, and various forms of combat training. He maintained detailed records of his physical regimen, creating a systematic approach to warrior fitness that, had his papers not been lost during World War II, might have significantly influenced military training. In 1904, his regiment transferred back to South Africa, where he received an appointment that would prove crucial to his future career, becoming aide-de-camp to Sir Henry Hildyard, Commander-in-Chief of British forces in South Africa. This position introduced him to the political and strategic dimensions of military leadership, though he maintained his preference for direct action over administration. The years between 1904 and 1914 marked what he called his heyday. As aide-de-camp, his duties were light enough to allow ample time for polo, hunting, and the refined pursuits of colonial society. In 1907, he formally became a British subject, taking the oath of allegiance to King Edward VII on September 13th. This period also saw him expand his linguistic abilities. Beyond English, French, and Arabic, he developed working knowledge of German and Polish, skills that would prove invaluable in his later diplomatic career. His marriage in 1908 to Countess Frederica, Maria, Carolina, Henrietta, Rosa, Sabina, Franziska, Fugger von Babenhausen seemed to establish him firmly within European aristocracy. The union connected him to several royal houses and would later provide useful diplomatic contacts. However, his relationship with his wife remained distant. She preferred Vienna's social whirl to his more martial pursuits. This marriage would produce 2 daughters, though characteristically, he would barely mention his family life in his later memoirs. The years leading up to World War I saw him developing his philosophical approach to warfare. While most of his contemporaries viewed war as a necessary evil or a patriotic duty, Carton de Wiart increasingly saw it as life's greatest adventure. He developed a complex philosophy about the relationship between civilization and conflict, writing that force cannot be eliminated, and it is the only real and unanswerable power. As Europe lurched toward catastrophe in the summer of 1914, Carton de Wiart found himself headed in the opposite direction, bound for British Somaliland. The irony of finally achieving his long-held desire to pursue action against Mohammed bin Abdullah, the Mahd Mullah, just as the greatest conflict in human history erupted, was not lost on him. At each port of call on his journey to Africa, news reached him of escalating tensions in Europe, and his cup of misery, as he wrote, overflowed. When on arrival in Aden, I learned that England had declared war on Germany. His service with the Somaliland Camel Corps revealed new dimensions of his military expertise. He developed a deep respect for the native Somali troops under British command, noting their exceptional bravery and recording one particularly striking incident. One officer who had been in a very hard fight with the dervishes told me that the Somalis had formed square and were being heavily attacked. One of his men, having fired all of his ammunition, quite simply put his rifle across his shoulders and walked into the dervishes. On November 18th, 1914, Carton de Wiart led his men in an assault on the dervish stronghold at Shimba Beris. The fort crowned the tallest mountain in Somaliland, and the hot Kharif wind howled around them, heavy with stinging sand. The assault itself would enter military legend, not for its success, but for the extraordinary display of resilience that followed. As they advanced under sparse cover from scrub vegetation, the dervishes opened fire. 3 bullets struck Carton de Wiart in the face in rapid succession. The first took his left eye and part of his ear. The second ricocheted into the same eye socket, and a third caused additional damage. Yet he continued to lead the assault, displaying what military psychologists would later study as an almost superhuman capacity for functioning under extreme trauma. His return to England for medical treatment marked the beginning of his iconic appearance. Fitted with a glass eye to satisfy military regulations, he found the prosthetic unbearably uncomfortable. While riding in a London taxi, he unceremoniously removed it and threw it out the window. From that day forward, he would sport his signature black eye patch, which went through several design iterations before he settled on the style that would become legendary. Lord Ismay, who served alongside him in Somaliland, provided valuable insight into Carton de Wiart's extraordinary character. He didn't check his stride, but I think the bullet stung him up, as his language was awful. The doctor could do nothing for his eye, but he had to keep him with us. He must have been in agony. Ismay also noted that Carton de Wiart honestly believed that he regarded the loss of an eye as a blessing, as it allowed him to get out of Somaliland to Europe, where he thought the real action was. His wounds earned him the Distinguished Service Order, DSO, though the decoration seemed to mean little to a man whose appetite for combat remained undiminished. By February 1915, having convinced yet another medical board that he was fit for service, Carton de Wiart arrived in France to join the fighting on the Western Front. The Western Front presented warfare evolved beyond anything in his previous experience. The medieval brutality of colonial conflicts had been industrialized, mechanized, and amplified to an unprecedented scale. Yet Carton de Wiart adapted quickly, developing innovative tactical approaches to trench warfare that would influence military doctrine. His personal innovations included techniques for leading from the front while maintaining command control, methods of coordinating infantry advances with artillery support, and practical solutions for maintaining unit cohesion under heavy fire. The spring of 1915 found Carton de Wiart in the mud-filled trenches of Ypres, where he would confront warfare's evolution from individual heroism to industrial slaughter. The Second Battle of Ypres introduced him to modern combat's most horrific innovation, chemical warfare. When the Germans launched their first chlorine gas attacks, Carton de Wiart displayed his characteristic sang-froid, noting that the gas was not affecting me much. His greater concern was the relentless artillery bombardment, which he claimed would have been exhilarating if only a little of it had been coming from our side. It was during this intense period that fate would deal him another devastating injury, one that would complete his transformation into the legendary figure of military law. During a night march to relieve an infantry unit, German artillery opened up on his position. In the chaos that followed, shrapnel from an exploding shell, combined with fragments from his own wristwatch, shattered his left hand. The damage was catastrophic. His palm was torn apart, leaving only 2 fingers dangling by threads of skin. What followed would become perhaps the most legendary demonstration of his incredible pain tolerance and determination. When the medical officer refused to amputate his mangled fingers, Carton de Wiart took matters into his own hands, literally. Modern medical analysis suggests this act required not just extraordinary courage, but an almost unique physiological relationship with pain. He later described the incident with characteristic understatement. I asked the doctor to take my fingers off. He refused, so I pulled them off myself and felt absolutely no pain in doing it. The remainder of his left hand would be properly amputated later that year, but Carton de Wiart viewed this not as a disability, but as a technical challenge to be overcome. He developed a systematic approach to adapting to one-handed operation, creating innovative techniques for essential military skills like shooting, riding, and even throwing grenades. He would later document these methods, though sadly, these papers were lost when the Soviets seized his Polish estate in 1939. His most remarkable achievement was mastering the art of pulling grenade pins with his teeth while keeping his one good hand free for throwing, a technique that would later become standard training for commando units. By 1916, he had convinced yet another medical board to return him to active duty, this time taking command of the 8th Battalion, Gloucestershire Regiment. His men quickly learned that their new commander's distinctive appearance, the eye patch and empty sleeve, was matched by an equally remarkable leadership style. He never carried a revolver, explaining that he didn't trust himself not to use it on his own men if they showed reluctance to advance. Instead, he carried only a walking stick, which he used both to point out objectives and occasionally to prod reluctant soldiers forward. It was in command of this unit that he would perform the actions that would earn him Britain's highest military honour, the Victoria Cross. The date was July the 2nd and 3rd, 1916, during the Battle of the Somme at the village of La Boiselle. The fighting was apocalyptic in its intensity, with 3 battalion commanders already killed in action. Carton de Wiart took command of all 3 units, but with telephone lines cut and no radio communication available, he was forced to act as his own messenger. His Victoria Cross citation in the London Gazette captured the essence of his leadership. For most conspicuous bravery, coolness, and determination during severe operations of a prolonged nature. It was owing in great measure to his dauntless courage and inspiring example that a serious reverse was averted. He displayed the utmost energy and courage in forcing our attack home. After 3 other battalion commanders had become casualties, he controlled their commands and ensured that the ground one was maintained at all costs. He frequently exposed himself in the organisation of positions and supplies, passing unflinchingly through fire barrage of the most intense nature. His gallantry was inspiring to all. The Victoria Cross did nothing to diminish Carton de Wiart's appetite for frontline combat. Instead, it seemed to intensify his determination to lead by example, regardless of personal cost. That cost would prove considerable. Military medical records from this period document an almost unprecedented series of severe wounds sustained and survived by a single soldier, leading to extensive study of his case by military physicians both during and after the war. During the continuing Battle of the Somme, a German bullet carved a bloody furrow across his skull but somehow failed to penetrate. An incident that added to his growing reputation for invulnerability. The medical report from this wound notes his exceptional coherence despite significant blood loss and possible cranial trauma. At Passchendaele, he took a bullet through the hip that would have crippled most men. At Cambrai, another through the leg, and during the Battle of Arras, he was shot through the ear, completing what seemed like a methodical campaign by German marksmen to remove him piece by piece. His response to these injuries established a pattern that would influence military medical practice. He allowed only the minimum treatment necessary before demanding to return to his men. One London hospital became so accustomed to his visits that they maintained a dedicated room for him, complete with monogram pajamas. The medical staff documented his extraordinary recoveries, noting his unusual combination of physical resilience and psychological determination. By late 1916, his reputation for surviving seemingly fatal wounds had earned him the nickname the Unkillable Soldier. His men began to believe he was genuinely immortal, a notion he did nothing to discourage. As one soldier later recalled, cold shivers went down the backs of everyone in the brigade, for he had an unsurpassed record as a fire eater, missing no chance of throwing the men under his command into whatever fighting happened to be going on. His command style evolved during this period into something unique in military history. He developed innovative tactical approaches to trench warfare, emphasizing aggressive action and personal leadership. His methods, while successful, often conflicted with conventional military wisdom. He never carried a sidearm, explaining with characteristic directness that he didn't trust himself not to use it on his own men if they showed reluctance to follow orders. Instead, he wielded only a walking stick, which became as much a part of his legend as his eye patch and empty sleeve. November 1916 saw him become the youngest brigadier general in the British Army, a promotion that came with a telling observation from his superior officers. He may be missing several parts, but his spirit remains entirely intact. This new role should have kept him further from the front lines, but Carton de Wiart had other ideas. He continued to lead from the front, believing that a commander's place was where the fighting was thickest. During this period, he developed a sophisticated philosophy of warfare that went beyond mere combat tactics. His writings from this time preserved in fragments that survived the loss of his Polish estate, reveal a deep understanding of the relationship between violence and civilization. Governments may think and say as they like, he wrote, but force cannot be eliminated, and it is the only real and unanswerable power. We are told that the pen is mightier than the sword, but I know which of these weapons I would choose. His perspective on war was unique, even among professional soldiers. He viewed it not as a necessary evil or a patriotic duty, but as life's greatest adventure. Modern psychological analysis suggests this attitude reflected not bloodthirstiness, but rather an extraordinary capacity to find purpose and even joy in extreme circumstances, a characteristic that made him both an exceptional leader and an inspiration to his men. The armistice of November 1918 found Carton de Wiart facing an unprecedented challenge: peace. However, fate and the British government had other plans. When asked to head their military mission to the newly independent Poland, he responded with characteristic candor. My geography being a little shaky, I had only a hazy idea as to the whereabouts of Poland, but I knew that it was somewhere near Russia and the Bolsheviks were fighting there. I couldn't think of any adequate reason why I'd been chosen for this inviting job, and I accepted it with alacrity before anyone had time to change his mind. What was meant to be a 3-week assignment evolved into a 20-year love affair with Poland. He arrived to find a nation fighting for survival on 5 simultaneous fronts: against the Germans, Bolsheviks, Ukrainians, Lithuanians, and Czechs. Rather than being daunted by this chaos, Carton de Wiart thrived in it, applying the lessons learned from his own multinational background and extensive combat experience. His relationship with Marshal Józef Pilsudski, Poland's leader, proved crucial to his success. The two men, despite their different backgrounds, formed an immediate connection based on mutual respect and shared military experience. The British ambassador noted that Carton de Wiart's advice carried enormous weight with Polish leadership, making him one of the 2 most influential foreigners in Warsaw. His diplomatic style remained as direct as his military leadership had been. During the Polish-Soviet War in 1920, he demonstrated this approach dramatically when his observation train came under attack by Red Cavalry. True to form, he engaged them single-handedly with his revolver from the footplate of the train. During the skirmish, he fell off the moving train, but managed to scramble back aboard and continue fighting, an incident that perfectly encapsulated his unique approach to diplomacy. He showed particular impatience with the political niceties of his role, especially in dealing with the French, who considered Poland their sphere of influence. His frustration with the British government's reluctance to provide arms to the Poles led to several strongly worded dispatches to London. He argued forcefully that supporting Poland against Bolshevism was more practical than backing the doomed White Russian forces, a strategic assessment that history would prove correct. For his services to Poland, he received a remarkable reward: the use of a 500,000-acre estate in the Pripyat marshes, a wild region larger than Ireland. Here, Carton de Wiart found his paradise, writing, "I dropped into its life as easily as into a deep armchair, and should never have come out of it if Hitler had not precipitated me forcibly." The estate became both his personal hunting ground and a laboratory for his theories about leadership and character development. During his 15 years in the marshes, he developed a systematic approach to estate management that combined traditional Polish methods with modern agricultural techniques. He established detailed records of his hunting exploits, claiming to have shot over 20,000 duck during his tenure. His estate became a gathering place for both Polish aristocracy and British military visitors, where he could combine his social duties with his passion for outdoor pursuits. In April 1939, as storm clouds gathered over Europe, a phone call from the British ambassador interrupted Carton de Wiart's morning shoot. He had already dropped 60 snipe and was hoping to make it 100 before lunch. The summons to Warsaw proved urgent. He was to resume his old role as head of the British military mission to Poland. At age 59, with one eye, one hand, and countless war wounds, most men would have declined. Instead, he left immediately in the clothes he stood in, taking only his new British uniform. His return to Warsaw revealed how thoroughly warfare had evolved since his last active service. The German Blitzkrieg brought a devastating new form of mechanized warfare that made even the industrial slaughter of World War I seem antiquated. From his first observation of the conflict, he noted a profound change in warfare's character, writing with rare emotion that he saw the very face of war changed, bereft of romance, its glory shorn. No longer the soldier setting forth to battle, but the women and children buried under it. The Polish Air Force was decimated within days, and the British contribution to their allies' defense proved frustratingly ineffective. His assessment was characteristically blunt. They made matters worse by inflicting useless and irritating leaflet raids, which had no physical effect at all. We were crying out for bombs, not bits of idealistic paper. This criticism, delivered directly to London, demonstrated his continued willingness to speak truth to power, regardless of political consequences. During these critical days, Carton de Wiart worked tirelessly to coordinate what resistance he could. His experience from World War I proved valuable in recognizing the patterns of the German advance, though the speed and mechanization of the attack presented unprecedented challenges. He urged the Polish High Command to withdraw behind the Vistula River, advice that went unheeded with catastrophic consequences. The evacuation of the British mission became necessary as both German and Soviet forces closed in. His last days in Poland demonstrated both his tactical acumen and his characteristic disdain for personal danger. The car convoy carrying him and other officials came under attack from the Luftwaffe, resulting in the death of an aide's wife. During this period, he kept detailed notes of German tactics and capabilities, information that would prove valuable to British military planners. Their escape route took them through Romania, where the situation proved equally precarious. The pro-German faction in the Romanian government hoped to capture and hand over Carton de Wiart to Hitler, recognizing his potential value as both a propaganda prize and a source of military intelligence. In a characteristic display of his fiery temperament, he confronted a Romanian border guard, declaring in both English and French, "There are only three sorts of Romanians. They're either pimps, pederasts, or violinists, and bloody few are violinists." The Romanian Prime Minister, who was pro-Western, ensured his safe passage, but paid for this decision with his life, being assassinated by Romanian fascists with German encouragement just hours after Carton de Wiart's departure. This incident illustrated the deadly serious nature of the diplomatic game being played across Europe, where even small decisions could have fatal consequences. Following his return to England, Carton de Wiart found himself dining with Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain at 10 Downing Street, where he delivered his candid assessment of the Polish disaster. Despite his advanced age and accumulated injuries, he immediately sought active service. In April 1940, he received command of the Anglo-French forces in Norway, designated as Scissors Force, a mission that would demonstrate both the limitations of Allied military capability and his own indomitable spirit. Before departure, he was promoted to acting Lieutenant General, though in a characteristic display of modesty and pragmatism, he never attached the badges of his new rank to his uniform. "I had a feeling," he later wrote, "that this command might be of short duration." His assessment proved grimly accurate, but not for the reasons he anticipated. The Norwegian campaign revealed the inadequacies of Allied preparation. His forces arrived without basic equipment, no transport, no air cover, And in a detail that would seem comical, if not so tragic, the French Alpine troops' ski bindings had been left behind. The German Luftwaffe destroyed his base at Namsos, reducing the town to rubble. Yet even in these desperate circumstances, Carton de Wiart's leadership proved inspiring. During one particularly intense bombardment, his response perfectly illustrated his unique character. A staff officer recorded, "Well equipped for winter warfare, the French rapidly dispersed outside the town and took to the rocks like rabbits. Standing in the open beneath a hailstorm of bombs, Carton de Wiart fished in his pocket for his cigarette case, took a cigarette out of it and lit it. No easy task for a man with one arm, and muttered, 'Damn frogs, they're all the same. One bang, and they're off.' The campaign ended in evacuation, but Carton de Wiart's next assignment would lead to one of the most remarkable chapters in his extraordinary life. In April 1941, Winston Churchill personally selected him to lead a crucial mission to Yugoslavia. The flight ended in disaster when both engines of his Wellington bomber failed over the Mediterranean. The crash landing in the sea began a sequence of events that would add to his legend. Despite being in his 60s, with one eye and one arm, he helped an injured crew member swim the mile to shore through cold Mediterranean waters. His remarkable stamina, developed through decades of rigorous physical training, proved crucial. However, they had landed in Italian-controlled Libya, and capture was inevitable. The Italians could scarcely believe their luck at capturing such a prize. A senior British officer with the Victoria Cross and numerous other decorations, sporting an eye patch and missing a hand. He was transferred to the Castello di Vincigliata, a medieval castle near Florence that served as a special prison for high-ranking Allied officers. Among his fellow prisoners were Lieutenant General Sir Richard O'Connor and Lieutenant General Sir Philip Neame, both captured in North Africa. The fellowship that developed among these senior officers revealed a different side of Carton de Wiart: his ability to maintain morale through humor and understated leadership. His fellow captives described him as a delightful character who must hold the record for bad language, while noting his unfailing courtesy and consideration for others. Life in the Castello di Vincigliata revealed new dimensions of Carton de Wiart's character. The officers maintained certain standards, changing for dinner and observing proper military courtesy, even in captivity. They organized weekly classical music concerts, though Carton de Wiart admitted that classical music was beyond me. He preferred musicals. While other prisoners studied Italian or pursued various hobbies, he took up sunbathing, writing with characteristic dry humor. If you indulge long enough, you attain a kind of nirvana, the suspension of all thought and action, highly to be recommended for life in prison. However, this apparent contentment masked an intense determination to escape. Over his imprisonment, he participated in 5 escape attempts, including an audacious plan to tunnel out of the medieval castle. For 7 months, he and his fellow officers dug through solid bedrock using improvised tools. The one-handed, 60-something general took his regular turn at the digging, developing innovative techniques to compensate for his disability. The tunnel was completed in March 1943, and Carton de Wiart, along with 5 other officers, made their break for freedom. What followed was an extraordinary 8-day adventure through the Italian countryside. Despite being a one-eyed, one-handed, 62-year-old man who couldn't speak Italian, he managed to evade capture while disguised as a peasant. His inability to blend in was matched only by his resourcefulness in avoiding detection. The escape's failure did nothing to dampen his spirit. Even after recapture, he maintained his characteristic good humor and continued planning future attempts. His attitude so impressed his captors that when Italy began secretly negotiating its surrender to the Allies, they chose him as their emissary. This led to one of the war's more surreal episodes. Carton de Wiart being fitted for a civilian suit in Rome, agreeing only after receiving assurance that it wouldn't make him look like a gigolo. Upon his return to England, he found himself at the centre of high-level meetings about Italy's surrender. Within days, he was interviewed by the head of MI5, met with Clement Attlee, and briefed the director of military intelligence. When Churchill summoned him to Chequers, it wasn't for debriefing, but to offer him another mission: to serve as his personal representative to Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek in China. His response to this appointment revealed both his honesty and adventurous spirit. China had never figured in my book of reckonings, and I imagined it a long way off, full of whimsical little people with quaint customs who carved lovely jade ornaments and worshipped their grandmothers. Nevertheless, he accepted the position with his usual enthusiasm for new challenges. Carton de Wiart's mission to China marked the beginning of his final and perhaps most sophisticated military role. His journey began with the perilous flight over the hump, the treacherous air route across the Himalayas from India to China. Even for a man who had survived multiple plane crashes, the sight of those towering peaks inspired awe and a rare admission of vulnerability. As he gazed out, I could not help feeling a thrill of fear at their sharp unfriendliness. His arrival in Chongqing, China's wartime capital, revealed a society vastly different from any he had previously encountered. Yet his adaptability, honed through decades of cross-cultural military service, served him well. He developed a sophisticated appreciation for Chinese culture that went far beyond his initial preconceptions. "Two things struck me forcibly," he wrote. "The first was the amount of sheer hard work the people were doing, and the second, their cheerfulness in doing it." His relationship with Chiang Kai-shek proved particularly significant. Despite needing to work through interpreters, he had decided learning Chinese at his age would be futile. He developed a deep understanding of the Generalissimo's strategic thinking. He found Madame Chiang Kai-shek especially impressive, noting her exceptional intelligence and diplomatic skill. She became his most trusted translator, the only one he believed truly conveyed the nuances of his communications. Perhaps his most remarkable diplomatic encounter came during a dinner with Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai. In a display of the directness that had characterized his entire career, he interrupted one of Mao's propaganda speeches to criticize the communist forces for not doing enough to fight the Japanese. Rather than taking offense, Mao was momentarily stunned before breaking into laughter. Few Westerners dared to speak so bluntly to the communist leader. Carton de Wiart developed a strong antipathy toward the Chinese communists, viewing them more as political opportunists than patriots. His reports to London were characteristically blunt. They excelled in guerrilla warfare, which had a nuisance value, but no more. He particularly criticized their refusal to cooperate with nationalist forces against the Japanese, noting that they were communists before they were patriots, and they put a political creed above their country. During his time in China, he maintained detailed observations of both military and political developments. His reports to London displayed a sophisticated understanding of the complex interplay between nationalism, communism, and traditional Chinese culture. He predicted many of the challenges that would face post-war China, though his recommendations for stronger support of the nationalist government went largely unheeded. The end of World War II brought new challenges for Carton de Wiart. Churchill's electoral defeat in 1945 shocked him deeply. Our great war leader, the world's most loved and admired man, and my particular boss, had been ousted as premier, and Britain was now a socialist country. It was ingratitude walking hand in hand with politics. Nevertheless, he developed an unexpected respect for Clement Attlee and Foreign Secretary Ernest Bevin, agreeing to continue his role in China under their administration. In 1947, at age 66, an extraordinary opportunity presented itself. Chiang Kai-shek offered him the position of personal advisor. The role would have allowed him to remain in China, a country he had grown to love, with its endless opportunities for hunting and adventure. However, fate intervened in an almost absurd fashion. During a stopover in Rangoon, this veteran of countless battles, who had survived bullet wounds, plane crashes, and prison camps, slipped on coconut matting and fell down a flight of stairs. The fall broke several vertebrae and rendered him unconscious, an ignominious injury for a man who had faced death so many times in combat. During his 7 months of hospitalization, doctors took the opportunity to remove various pieces of shrapnel that had remained embedded in his body from his numerous war wounds. Medical records from this period provide fascinating insights into his extraordinary physiology. Decades-old fragments of metal had been encapsulated by his tissues with minimal adverse effects. His personal life underwent significant changes during this period. In 1949, his first wife died, and 2 years later, at age 71, he married Ruth Myrtle Muriel Joan McKechnie, known as Joan Sutherland. She was 23 years his junior, but proved a perfect match for his adventurous spirit. With the royalties from his memoir, Happy Odyssey, the couple purchased a property in County Cork, Ireland. His retirement years revealed new aspects of his character. He developed a sophisticated appreciation for wine and maintained an extensive cellar. His daily routine included a bottle of champagne before lunch, a habit he credited with maintaining his health. He continued to hunt and fish with the same intensity he had brought to warfare, though now his quarry was salmon rather than enemy soldiers. His memoir, published in the 1950s, became a bestseller, though characteristically, he omitted many of his most notable achievements. He made no mention of his Victoria Cross, his knighthood, or his Distinguished Service Order. The book focused instead on the adventures and camaraderie he had experienced, written with a mix of understatement and dry humor that perfectly captured his personality. Carton de Wiart's influence extended well beyond his death. His approach to leadership and combat has been studied at military academies worldwide. His ability to maintain morale through personal example, his tactical innovations in trench warfare, and his methods for commanding from the front have influenced military doctrine. His adaptations to his injuries, particularly his one-handed shooting and riding techniques, were documented and used in rehabilitation programs for wounded soldiers. Adrian Carton de Wiart died peacefully in his sleep on June 5, 1963, at age 83. As Lord Ismay wrote in tribute, he was a happy warrior if ever there was one. He always scorned the safe and easy way. He was literally shot to pieces, but his wounds only seemed to quicken his fighting spirit. His courage was not only superlative, it was infectious. His grave lies outside the walls of the local churchyard in County Cork, a final expression of his characteristic independence. His legacy lives on in military history as an exemplar of courage, resilience, and the warrior spirit. Modern military psychologists study his case to understand combat resilience and leadership under extreme conditions. His life spans the transition from Victorian colonial warfare to the atomic age, embodying both the virtues and complexities of his era, while providing timeless lessons in courage, adaptability, and indomitable spirit. Adrian Carton de Wiart's influence extends far beyond his military achievements, offering profound lessons in leadership, resilience, and human potential. His life provides a unique case study in adapting to adversity while maintaining unwavering purpose and dignity. Modern military psychologists have identified several key attributes that made Carton de Wiart exceptional. His remarkable pain tolerance, initially thought to be simple stoicism, has been studied as a possible example of congenital insensitivity to pain. However, medical records suggest he felt pain normally, but possessed an extraordinary ability to function despite it, a characteristic that has informed modern combat stress training. His leadership style, which combined aristocratic authority with genuine concern for his men, established principles still taught at military academies. He demonstrated that effective leadership requires more than courage. It demands authenticity, consistency, and a willingness to share hardship. His practice of leading from the front, while maintaining strategic awareness, set standards for battlefield command that remain relevant in modern warfare. His techniques for one-handed weapons operation, horse riding, and even formal dining etiquette were documented and have helped generations of wounded veterans. His example showed that disability need not mean inability, a principle that transformed military attitudes toward wounded servicemen. His diplomatic career offers lessons equally valuable in today's complex international environment. Despite his reputation as a warrior, he proved remarkably effective in cross-cultural communication. His success stemmed from combining absolute honesty with respect for local customs and traditions. His ability to maintain dignity and authority while adapting to different cultural contexts provides a model for modern military diplomacy. Carton de Wiart's approach to adversity has particular relevance in contemporary leadership training. He demonstrated that setbacks, even severe ones, can become assets if properly understood and integrated into one's experience. His habit of treating wounds as technical problems to be solved rather than disasters to be lamented offers valuable lessons in resilience and adaptability. His personal philosophy, though never formally articulated, emerges clearly through his actions and writings. He believed in living life fully, accepting risks as necessary for achievement, and maintaining standards regardless of circumstances. His insistence on changing for dinner, even in prison, demonstrates that dignity comes from internal discipline rather than external conditions. Perhaps most significantly, Carton de Wiart embodied the principle that character is destiny. His success in varied roles, from frontline commander to high-level diplomat, stemmed from consistent application of personal qualities: courage, directness, adaptability, and an unfailing sense of duty. These characteristics, rather than any specific skills or knowledge, enabled him to function effectively across widely different contexts and challenges. His life spans a crucial transition in warfare and international relations, from the twilight of European aristocratic militarism to the dawn of modern mechanized combat and nuclear deterrence. His ability to adapt while maintaining core principles provides valuable lessons for military leaders facing today's rapidly evolving challenges. Modern military training programs study his career for insights into developing resilient leaders. His example shows that effective leadership combines physical courage with moral courage, technical competence with human understanding, and tactical skill with strategic awareness. These lessons remain relevant as warfare continues to evolve technologically, while retaining its fundamentally human character. Carton de Wiart's legacy reminds us that extraordinary achievement comes not from avoiding adversity, but from meeting it with courage, adaptability, and unshakable purpose. His life demonstrates that the measure of a person lies not in avoiding wounds, but in transcending them, not in escaping challenges, but in meeting them with dignity and determination.